So it's obvious to everybody, who watches this that I'm a Mopar guy, right? But I'm also a closet Buick guy. And I got a history that goes with this car. Back in the late 80s, I was just starting to get into fuel cars. I was helping a few different cars, and I wanted to build my own. So I was in the market for a funny car, for a roller, right? So I used to hang out at this place called PG Performance in Brooklyn. And Scotty Guadagno, Patty Guadagno's dad, great people. And actually, we were just talking about this. Scotty used to do a lot of the research and development work for Kenny Bell, for street racing this stuff in Brooklyn, 150th Street. But anyway, make a long story short, I'm looking for a funny car roller to get started. And somebody says, hey, I know where there's an old funny car sitting in a warehouse. So this is about 1989, 1980. So I saw it, and they said, it's a Buick. And I was like, Buick? Really? Well, let's check it out. This was the car. And it was built by this guy's dad. And there's his dad.
There he is.
Come along for the ride.
There's Dad, Jerry Lepore, right there on the injector.
Give a quick history of the car.
Well, my name is John Lepore, and this car was built in 1967. I was 10 years old. My dad constructed it. It was one of only 2 Buick bodies, 67 Skylarks ever made.
Ron Pellegrini had the other one,
Ron Pellegrini built both of the bodies. Actually, the Beware car was a 68 car.
Okay.
The 67 car was called Superbird, and it didn't flip up, and it was Chrysler Hemi powered. This remains to this day the world's only Buick powered Buick funny car.
Let's go look at this engine. Come here, this is great. So now this engine has gone what?
779, 191 miles an hour in 1969, basically.
You're wrapping your head around that? This is a Buick. It's an actual Buick. It's gone 779 at almost 200 miles an hour. This car was run up until, what, 1971?
About 1971, yeah. And it had 3 drivers, very colorful drivers. Coney Island Ralph Landolfi was the first driver.
Ralph was a great guy.
He was, he sure was. And then after that was Rapid Red Lang actually stepped in the car running the Chrysler.
Now, he used to run, Red Lang was the driver for the Dead End Kids.
Exactly. And he took that engine out of the Dead End Kids dragster and put it in his car. Ran it only one time.
Okay.
And was scared to death. Actually, the 3 bolts there from the steering wheel, when Ralph got in, they would remove them because they didn't have a quick release wheel. So when Red got in, they'd actually, like undo those 3 bolts. Red would get in, and then they'd bolt it back in. So he really didn't have an escape route if something was to go wrong.
Didn't have much protection from the hips down either.
Didn't have much protection anywhere you look at it.
This is the way they ran these cars back in those days. It's just like minimal roll bar. So the fine points of this thing, right? It's got a turbo 400 trans in it. It's got
Wildcat rear end.
It's got a Buick Wildcat rear
with
end.
a Mickey Thompson magnesium center section. This is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's a Logie chassis copy. My father made this. It's a copy of a Logie chassis from the day. And the story of this car was obviously Steve Malise, who was my dad's business partner, owned a Buick dealer in New York. And he got 19 New York Buick dealerships to put $1,000 each in. And that's how the car got built.
So the motor is
It's a 430
okay.
Buick, which would have been the biggest engine Buick had in '67 out of a Wildcat.
Okay. And it's got Buick crank in it.
Buick parts throughout the motor.
What rods are in there?
These are actually GRP, Crowler rods.
Oh, okay.
Sitting on a shelf for 20 years.
Now look at some of this fabrication. The blower intake is a dual quad intake that they cut the top of it off and welded a plate on.
And that's the original 871 blower to the car.
Yeah, now the blower is another thing. You guys are used to seeing a V6 style, no, a straight 6 style blower, a straight 6 or straight 871 with the 4 bolts on either side. Yeah. This is actually off of like, yeah, this is a V blower. This is like, you just don't see this stuff. And in 871, in 871 in 1967 was a huge blower. At the time, they were all running 6s and they weren't even Teflon in those things yet.
Exactly.
So this thing was like just moved a lot of wind for its day. And what else? What other like Buick special things around?
Well, when this car was built, there were no speed parts. So what my dad did, they had to make the girdle for the crank in the bottom, and also a timing cover was made, was fabricated where the Chevrolet Magneto was driven off the front, off the cam, and then the oil pump and the fuel pump were also driven off the crank.
Oh, look at this, yeah.
But since that time, obviously, many ways to skin a cat. So now with the Gilmore belt, that John created this system, which has the oil pump and of course the fuel pump's in the front now. So everything's kind of a compact unit sitting here in the front.
Now, was this run as a dry sump motor?
It was
in
in
the day?
1967. And if you think about that, there weren't too many forms of racing in 1967 that featured dry sump.
No, that was like IndyCar stuff, Formula One
This
stuff.
came out of a sprint car, Mickey Thompson piece out of a sprint car in 67. I just learned that 2 weeks ago. I didn't know that. So I learn every day.
There you go.
Learn every day about this car, more and more.
So this thing, when I found this car, this was roached.
Right. Oh,
Right.
it was.
Now you guys, I mean, I see Concord, the
Oh yeah,
Elegance.
Concord Elegance, and we're traveling. We've been to 25 states in the last year and a half.
It's an absolute jewel.
Thank you. It is a family treasure, and we definitely appreciate the fact that we have it in our hands.
So in the old days, when I used to make these cars, it wasn't like today where everything's fabricated from scratch. What they would do is they would actually take a stock car, like sometimes right off the dealer's showroom, and they would make a mold off of that car. And then, you know, that would become a buck, and then they build a glass body off of it. And that's what this is. If you come here and you look at some of the fine details, it still has the door lock on. You know, the lines for the doors. This is actual chrome trim. This is actually from, a production car. And if you come back here, even the emblems, you know, they're not painted on. Those are real emblems.
Okay. You got one more pair coming.
And those are real Buick taillights. Do I regret not buying this thing for? I think it went like $1,100 for it.
Man, don't even tell me that because I paid a lot more than that. I paid a lot more than that, Tony.
Well, thank you for your time, brother, man.
Thank you so much for your time and also for having your interest in this car.
That's it, guys. I'll see you tomorrow.